open the festival with Paul and Paulette Take a Bath in partnership with the French Embassy. It's with great pleasure we welcome filmmaker Jethro Massey, whose creativity and storytelling have captivated audiences worldwide. Please welcome Jethro Massey. Jethro is a British-French director and producer based in Paris and the founder of Film Fabric Limited. His films have been showcased and awarded at film festivals across the world. His debut fiction feature film, Paul and Paulette Take a Bath, premiered at Venice Critics Week 2024, where it won the Audience Award. Tonight's event is extra special because we are also celebrating French Language Day with the support of the French Embassy in India, honoring the beauty of storytelling and its impact on cinema. Before we begin the screening, I'd like to welcome Matthew from the French Embassy, who will commemorate French Language Day with a few words about the significance of this celebration and its connection to cinema.
Hello, namaskar, bonjour. As was just explained, today is a special day. It's Journée de la Francophonie, the French-speaking, the French Language Day. It's special because it's celebrated in 90 plus countries. There's 93 countries that are a member of what we call La Francophonie, and the French language is our common wealth. And it's, as you all know, culture plays a very important part for France and for French-speaking countries. And I'm particularly delighted. I won't give you a lecture on France. We have a reception for that later if you have any questions. But I'm really happy to have a perfect example of what also we mean by francophonie. For us, francophonie is also a sign of diversity. Speaking French in a world where some languages are more dominant and some people don't bother learning any other language than English as a kind of lingua franca. Speaking different languages is for us super important because behind languages you also have culture, you have different sensitivities. I'm stating the obvious in India where everybody speaks 3, 4, 5 different languages. That's not the case in France, so we really fight to keep different languages alive. And I'm saying that this is a perfect example because Jethro is a Franco-British director based in France, working in English as well. And I think you are absolutely typical of what we like in francophonie, is to be welcoming. You also know that France is a great country for, let's face it, soft money for cinema, not always, but for a lot of films. So we have a lot of international co-productions, including with India. And for us, it's really, you may know, we have a special fund called Aide au Cinéma du Monde, support for world cinema, where 100% international stories can get French funding. Right now, we're surfing on the wave of All We Imagine as Lights and Tosh and Girls Will Be Girls, for instance, 3 co-productions. And I think this is really epitomizes what francophonie is all about, diversity, openness. So I'm delighted to then give the floor to Jethro, a perfect example of this diversity. Thank you.
First of all, thank you to BookMyShow and to the Red Lorry Film Festival. I'm really touched and honored to be here. I don't want to say too much about the film before you've seen it, but I'll come back afterwards for a Q&A, and do stick around if you have any questions. As you mentioned, I grew up with a French mother in England, and it was only when I was 20-something years old I moved to Paris. I moved to Paris because I loved French literature and French cinema. And so in this film you might see, it might be mostly in English, some in French, but you might see some French Nouvelle Vague influence and maybe some British sensibilities as well. But I'll leave you to identify that yourselves and see hopefully enjoy the film. There we go.
Thank you, Jethro. We're going to move on to the screening. A request, please do keep your phones on silent. I can hear somebody's phone beeping away. So just on silent or vibrate. I know some of you have work calls to take. Please enjoy the screening and just take out 10 minutes after the movie for some questions which you may have for Mr. Massey, and I'm sure you will have a lot of questions. I've just met him. but looking at his aura and vibe, I cannot believe such a film came out of such a mind. So looking forward to enjoying that. Thank you very much. Let's get on with the screening.
It's like you have to go deeper into it. Everyone's feeling is different. And it's sort of philosophical, and it's everyone has an individual experience seeing it.
I think this is the thing that I really love about cinema is you make a film and you put some thoughts in there, and then every member of the audience will have a different experience and different feelings. Some people might connect with one character more than another, or and I think that's the beauty of cinema, of the fact that once the film's made, it belongs to the audience afterwards. And hopefully it was a film that doesn't impose too much my thoughts on it. It had some ideas in it, and then leaves it to each person to interpret their feelings on it.
So when you're writing for a film like this, which has two different interesting characters, what came first? Was it the thought or the screenplay? Or did you just write characters and put them together and just let it play out? What was your, how did it jump?
So it was very much an idea at the beginning of the script of these two characters that would go to places where terrible things would have happened, and recreate the scenes of those murders and crimes and executions. And that came from an image which some of you might know, or some of you might discover this week, because I know there's a film playing in the festival called Lee, which is a film with Kate Winslet, which describes the life of Lee Miller. I don't want to spoil the film for you, but at the end you might see the same bathroom that Paul and Paulette take a bath in. And it was actually a photograph of Lee Miller in that bathroom, which was taken on the same day that Adolf Hitler committed suicide, that had really struck me. I wondered why this war photographer would go into his bathroom and take a photograph of herself there, and not, say, at his desk or at his front door, but to go into his bathroom. And that really disturbed me. And so I wanted to explore why that was so bothersome, and why it troubled me, and why it stayed in my mind. And writing a film about these two characters who would go to this kind of place was a good way for me to explore that. So then the characters of Paul and Paulette afterwards came as I tried to imagine who might go on this adventure. So I imagined one girl with a very morbid obsession to go to these places, and a young man who's in love with her and willing to go along on this journey and try and bring what he can to this to her exploration of these ideas.
Are they inspired from real life, or the anyone you know?
Oh, the characters. I think they are all a combination of lots of different people that I've met in my life. Some people would say that I have similarities to the character of Paul, but it's not an autobiographical film. But I'm an English person, or I grew up in England, but I ended up moving to France. I used to take a lot of photographs. In fact, the 35mm camera that he uses, or that Paulette gives to him, was my own personal camera. So there may be similarities there with me and the character. I think Paulette is probably a combination of a lot of my friends, people that I've met over the years. I'm always drawn to people who are very exuberant and want to go on adventures. So they're a combination of different people. And the parents, I can't say that they're inspired by a particular person, but by some people I've met along the way, or just stories that people have told me. I think there's a lot of things where there's just a little story that I heard, or somebody told me, and I sort of worked that into the story.
So I love the fact that how you use photographs and camera in itself as little snippets to take the story forward. One very interesting moment I noticed at the beginning is when Paul clicks Pauline for the first time. There's a little traffic signal in the behind that all of a sudden goes red. Now, was it accidental or was it something that you planned? Was it planned?
I think that was accidental.
It works well.
It works well.
Fantastic.
And what I can tell you is when we were filming on Place de la Concorde, that square at the beginning, is a very busy touristic square, and there's a lot of traffic going around. And so to film each take, what we did was we timed how long is it red, how long is the light red, how long is it green. And so we knew when it was going to change and when we would have 45 seconds of silence to do a take. And so that's how we were filming that scene in between the cars. But I think that the fact that it turns just as he clicks is probably just coincidence.
So my next question was just that, how do you manage to shoot in such a busy place? But you answered that. Also, just one last question as a filmmaker. How would you describe, what's your process of using music? How would you use music in films, and what advice would you give for filmmakers?
Yeah, that's a very good question that I love. There are two different types of music really in the film. There are the songs, which are by Mark Tassel, and the Chamber Pop Consort is the name of his band. There's composed music by Julien Decoré, that's the sort of music that doesn't have any vocals on. Julien Decoré is a collaborator that I've been working with for years on short films. He doesn't use much electronic sounds. He uses a lot of real instrumentation. That I love that. But Mark Tassel is somebody that I met 15 years ago, and I heard he's an Englishman in Paris like me, and I'd heard he played me a couple of his songs. He's also a painter. He's also a very multi-talented man. And when he played me these songs 15 or so years ago, I said to myself, this is great music for a film. But I don't know which film. It's very strange music sometimes. It's beautiful, it's poetic, it's dark, but it would be hard to find the right film. But when I had the idea for Paul and Paulette Take a Bath, I said to myself straight away, his music is perfect. And so I knocked on his door with a hard drive in my hand, and I said, give me everything. And he said, what? No, give me every song you've ever written. I want it on this hard drive. And he was very kind, and he copied everything onto the hard drive for me, and I went away, and as I was writing the script, I was listening to his music. And so the music became very much part of the architecture of the film. It was, that's how we have a scene with him singing in the cabaret. It had to be written that he was there singing in the cabaret to film it. And I often do that. I now have found that sometimes when you're writing, you might write for 3 weeks and then you stop and go away and then you come back a month or two later. And having a playlist of the music just takes you right back into the story. And so even with the next film I'm making, I've made a playlist which won't be the music for the film, but it's the right mood for the film. And every time I go away from the script and I come back, I can just put this playlist on, and straight away my thoughts are in the story again. And I think it's really, really important to do that and to feel. It's so important in creating a mood, the music, and knowing the right vibe. I think it can guide all of your choices as a director. What do you do with the camera? Who are the people you cast? What should the dialogue sound like? All of those things, I think the music can really help guide you if you come from that sort of emotional, because music is emotion first, I think. And if you come from that emotion first and then everything feeds into that, then you're on your way, I think.
Thank you.
I would like to pose one question. So one of the questions I wanted to ask was, how much time did it take you to write the entire scene? And the other one was, so there was like a sudden twist and or changed the emotions of Paulette. So So she was into Paul in the start, and then later on suddenly twisted her emotions, and she fell in love with her old ex. So what inspired what inspired that change in her emotion? Like if you could have an answer to that.
Of course. To answer the first question, the writing was over a period of maybe 3 or 4 years, but in between, in the middle, there was COVID, and I didn't write at all during COVID. It was more a case of writing for, I usually write in the mornings, maybe 3 hours in the morning before I look at my emails and the rest of the world invades my brain. And maybe for 3 weeks, and then I'll stop, and then I'll have another opportunity where I have a few weeks where I can write. And so maybe 3 or 4 periods of 2 or 3 weeks just writing in the morning. As far as the character of Paulette goes, I think it was interesting for me to have a... I think Paul is more in love with Paulette than Paulette is in love with Paul. And I think we understand at the beginning of the film that she has another story that she's lived and she's not maybe over yet. It interested me to make a film where it's not just because the guy loves the girl that she has to love him back, you know. And so that doesn't mean she didn't want to have a fling with him. And so I think she falls into the comfort of the friendship, and it becomes something more, but it's never quite what Paul wants it to be. And so at the end, for me, the film is about him having to realize that even though they have something, it's not going to be everything that he wants, but also that that they have, even though it's not going to be a great love story at the end of the film, that they're going to have a great friendship is important to me as well. And I think that's something that I would love to see more of in cinema, the films about friendships, and friendships between men and women, not just between women and women and men, because I have some really important female friends in my life. And I don't see it enough on screen because, of course, we all also love a love story. So this was a film that was maybe somewhere in between the two.
These crime spots for them to narrate their stories of life. Like first they were during that Marilyn Monroe, and then the next was like why did you use these crime spots for them to narrate the story of life?
Well, I think for me there's something a bit like. I think children do this very often. They might see adults doing things, and then they recreate those scenes as well, right? Or whether it's with toys, or whether it's saying the same things that they heard their teacher saying or their parents saying. So in a way, it's a way of exploring and understanding the world to me when you play with these, again, whether it's Marilyn Monroe, or whether it's a murder or an execution. And so for me it was a way of, when I saw that photograph of Lee Miller in Hitler's bathtub, I wanted to know why she would go into the bathtub. And I imagine she wanted to experience, I don't know why did she have this impulse to get in, to take her clothes off and be in the same place where Adolf Hitler did the same thing. So I had this curiosity about someone else, and I think these characters had this curiosity. And then when I was writing the story, I had this other theory, which was if I started very far back in history with the execution of Marie Antoinette at the guillotine, and slowly the games that they played became closer to today, then at some point it would become uncomfortable. It might not be uncomfortable when it's Marie Antoinette's execution, but certainly when it's terrorist killers of the last 10 years, then it's very uncomfortable. And we know that Paul has gone too far. And my theory was that maybe for every different person in the room, the moment where they cross the line and go too far is a different place. But so really, the question is to the audience is when have they gone too far.
So,
It's okay, we can hear you.
Yeah,
We can hear you.
you can hear. Just give the mic.
in the end, Paul, he's on the bed and he's crying and he's telling he was pissed like that before he went to kill 113 people. So what is that exactly? Is he talking about his father or?
It was the apartment is it's probably not as well known here as in France for me, but it was a terrorist attack in Paris, this Bataclan terrorist attack where several gunmen went into a music concert, a rock concert with machine guns, and they also shot people on cafe terraces. And so it's a moment that really has really hit a lot of people in Paris personally. A lot of people lost friends, and it's something that has really, what's the word? It stayed with us like a scar, like any such attack might. So that was the thing, was that he went to that apartment. That is was such a traumatic event in Paris for a lot of us who were around at that time.
Yeah, thank you for a beautiful film. I just had a question because on the one hand you have two terrific actors who have incredible chemistry, even if they expect something different from the relationship. On the other hand, you're the writer and director, and I'm just wondering, what is your relationship with the actors? How do you lead the actors? Do you keep them on a tight leash because you know exactly what you want? Or was there any room for improvisation? Did they bring anything to the story that you hadn't thought about? A kind of interpretation you hadn't thought about?
The most important part of my job is picking the actors. Afterwards, finding the right people who have the right chemistry. Afterwards, I have to give all credit to them for having an incredible talent. We didn't stray off script much, but what we did was we rehearsed a little bit. Maybe we never rehearsed until the scene was perfect, but just until I felt like we were going to be okay on the day. And during those rehearsals, we'd play around with the scenes a little more, and I would regularly steal a line that they improvised and put it in the script. And then when we were shooting, sometimes at the end of the scene, or they would ask me if they could just try a different line, and sometimes that ends up in the script, or they'd add something at the end. And the thing I would say is they're both actors who come from theatre. And it was a real benefit to me as a first-time filmmaker, especially on a tight budget, because they would always be perfectly in character. There would never be a moment when I felt like what they were saying wasn't real. And so if you're getting to the end of a long day and you don't have time to do the 3 different shots that you had, I could just put the camera on both of them together, and they could play the whole scene, and it would be real. And then so my job was only just calibrating a little bit of the performance. Maybe we needed this to be a bit heavier, a bit closer, but really my work was fine-tuning, and they were bringing the characters. And certainly it's a very strange experience to write the words and then see people incarnate those words and lift them up into something very real. So I was very lucky to find Marie and Jeremy. Yeah.
I have a question, which is very random, but I noticed it, that Paulette wears these different colors of Converse in various shots. And it was like, it intrigued me to see the different colors and how, and when did that enter into the picture, like of your, just by designing the character, and any reason behind that? I mean, because there's blue, there's purple, there's orange, there's green, there's all colors.
I also want to add to that. I saw them matching their colors quite often, blue and orange. Like when they had the orange jacket, they were both wearing blue tops.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well spotted with the Converse All Stars. Yes, it's true. It was the work of the costume designer, Joanna Wojtowicz, who's actually, this scene when they go into this cabaret. A lot of the extras and background actors in that scene were actually people who are in this world of cabaret in France. They dress like this to go to parties. Some of them dress like this every day of their life. And Joanna, the costume designer, is somebody from this circle of people that sort of recreate various old eras of Paris and Europe. And they really have some extraordinary clothes and outfits. And so she was a great person to have for this film, especially for the character of Paulette. She struggled with the character of Paul because she's not used to finding to things like T-shirts and jeans, but there was but she just had a great eye for colors and fitting things with the location. We'd look at the photos and see what we wanted the figures to look like in set. So, in that scene in the park where they're climbing on the statues. And some of it is happy accident. She found this yellow velvet suit that she's wearing, and then she'd already found the turquoise Converse, and then she found the T-shirt that would go with it and match perfectly. And then, of course, we're looking at the photos of the green and the grey statue, and that yellow velvet suit, which is so rich. And we'd already found Paul's jacket. And so, of course, then you go, we'll put that jacket that we have for him in the first scene would be perfect here. It was one of the rules that she made herself, Joanna, was that because they go on this road trip with a suitcase, is that all of her outfits would fit in one suitcase. So she has a lot of different looks, but everything fits in a suitcase that we could take with us anywhere.
What I really loved was the chemistry between them, and I was sitting there and I was like, is something going to happen between them? I wanted it to, but I also didn't. I'm like, can we just stick to the friendship, because it was so beautiful. And the chemistry, just the chemistry from the word go. And there was this longing in me. I'm like, I wish the serendipitous kind of thing where you just meet someone and you get it on like a house on fire, like from the word go. They were just, he's just such a good boy, He's just such a decent, good boy. And like my mother's heart kind of just went out to him. I would be like, this is such a great guy. And I love the little nerdy qualities, like how he always corrected people's pronunciation. All these little touches just added to making it so real. And just leaving you with just such a beautiful feeling, just like a smile on your face. And I was just wondering towards the end, oh my God, is it going to get macabre? Is it going to get dark? Because sometimes I feel American movies, they just take it to that place where it just gets yucky and there's something awful happening. But I loved how that didn't happen, in a way, and it was just so beautiful that you didn't go there maybe, and the friendship continued. And I also wanted to know, did she have to eat all those lemons with the skins?
She had, I was surprised because I was ready to have a bucket so she could spit everything out, but she really ate them every take. And she just had one rule. She said, I only organic lemons. And so as long as we brought organic lemons, but I was really surprised because I was thinking she would bite and then we'd finish the take, she'd spit it out, but she actually ate it and had no problem with it. It's one of the many things that are incredible about Marie Benatti, who plays Paulette, but that was just, no problem.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I'm just waiting. Sometimes something pops up, It's just
I
such
just have one more question.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you arrive at the title? How do you choose this particular title?
So the first thing was the photograph of the bathtub and then the story, and then the names of the characters that came, which came because I remember I met this. I met a girl at a friend's New Year's Eve party, and we got on well. It wasn't, but that she was making out with this other guy who's a friend of mine, and then called Paul, and months later I met up with this girl for a coffee because we were talking about a project, and I said, "Oh yeah, weren't you making out with Paul?" And she goes, "That's his name." And then she goes red, bright red, and I realized, of course, she's called Pauline, and she was embarrassed because she had the same name as the guy that she was kissing. And so I thought about that, and I thought this thing about how having these two very similar names is they're two different human beings, but they have the same name. It's slightly bothersome, and I thought it would be interesting to call two characters Paul and Paulette. And so when I thought, it's Paul and Paulette, and then take a bath seemed to be the way to the title, and I think I like it because it feels like a children's book. It feels like they go on an adventure, except going in a bathtub isn't what you usually write for a children's book. And of course, when you know what the bathtub is, it's not really. So I like having that surprise in the film and that sort of playful intrigue in there.
Yeah. Hi. I have a question about Paulette's father. I mean, we don't know what exactly happened with him, but was that intentional in a way that because Paulette's father was a murderer and that traumatic experience maybe led her to this obsession of, feeling the empathy for the war-struck people or people that actually went through something. So was that intentional in a way, or was that just?
Yeah, very much intentional. I think when I was wondering who are these characters, and in a way, a lot of the film is about perhaps trauma and crimes that happened in the past that still are with us today, and perhaps certainly with some of the things with French history, things that some of us let's call it intergenerational guilt of France's colonial past, and to me it seemed interesting to also have a mirror in the human story of Paulette and her father, who's done something terrible, but that she has to live with. So yes, very much. There was a reasoning behind. There was more of a story that we wrote and that she tells in the bathtub that got cut from the film because it just became a bit long. But I think all the important parts of the story are there. So I'm not going to elaborate on what the rest of the story was, but.
I have a question. So when they visit their parents' place, and then in the end when she's telling that I am a lesbian and I lie, I'm all like she likes men and she likes women and everything, and then she tells her mother, and then her mother she looks in front of her husband and she tells him, "Mujhe koto." So what? Why is that?
Hang on. Why is the mother? No.
Asking her husband.
Are you happy now? I think my feeling with the nature of that character of the mother is that she'll take the credit when it suits her, and she's probably saying, well, this is your fault for going to jail or whatever, So I think there's this something in. I mean, she's an awful character.
Because of father, the child's life was impacted in such a way.
I think so. I think in her mind it's probably that. Not that I think it's like that, but I think it's just her nature is to blame rather than to love. It's more hate and rejection than love is. I think the nature of that. And I have to say the actress had a really tough time with some of the lines that I was giving her, but it felt like the right thing to do for me to really sort of, to turn the screws on these characters and create a really difficult situation, and hopefully one that I've certainly had a few friends that have sort of recognized those kind of interactions as well that they've had when they were coming out, or I think it's a tough moment for parents as well. So sometimes the things that come out of your mouth aren't the nicest things either. So there we go.
Thank you. That keeps it so real. I'm sorry we have to wind up. Maybe you can meet him outside. But thank you so much for that movie in this day and age, to make such a slow, tender and refreshing movie. Really, thank you so much. Thank you to the Embassy and to Red Lorry and BookMyShow. Thank you very much.